Chapter 25 Hunger Strike. The first 2 days at Tan Lap Camp were days of rest. We gathered to sing nostalgic songs, eat lunch and dinner, bathe, do laundry, and wander around Zone A. We couldn't leave the area because the gates were locked, but we could visit each other within the houses in the zone. Meals were brought to us by criminal inmates working in the kitchen. Some criminal inmates were part of the representative committee, the collective detainees who represent others keeping orderly in the camp, but they only stood by observing us. On Sunday, July 24th, 1977, our daily activities proceeded as usual after the cell doors were opened by 2 officers, one armed guard and the camp warden. While I was sitting with Tuan, Han, and Locke, drinking tea at our spot, we heard commotion outside. A group of detainees was cheering for a fight. Some young men from the National Restoration Group were beating up Thuong, an inmate from the intelligence group. They claimed Thuong behaved cowardly by clasping his hands together when talking to the camp warden. As a result of the beating, Thuong's arm was broken. I hadn't seen Thuong's behavior that morning and didn't know if he was an informant, even though he'd been in the same camp as me since the beginning. Thuong wasn't a close friend of mine, just an ordinary detainee like many others who chose to hold their breath and cross the river to survive in the camp. If he had clasped his hands while speaking to the warden, I thought it was likely a habit due to the cold northern weather. The young men from National Restoration were patriots. I don't deny that, but they were too young to understand everything. Taking out their frustration against the communists on Thuong was deeply unjust. The officers and representative committee members took Thuong to the infirmary and closed the walls separating the houses in Zone A. The detainees began gathering in their cells, and I heard the voices of a group chorus singing Vietnam. Proud Homeland coming from House 2, a psychological warfare song often sung during protests. Some detainees from House 2 came over to invite Nguyen and Ben to join them. In House 1, where I was, there were about 100 detainees divided into 2 teams. Team 1, led by Nguyen, a detainee from Zone D of Thursday Duk Camp, and Team 2, led by Ben from Zone C of the same camp. Except for those bathing at the water reservoir, most detainees gathered and began singing nostalgic and protest songs. Around 10 a.m., for armed guards accompanied the warden into Zone A to summon a few detainees to the meeting hall. These were the ones who had attacked Thuong earlier that morning. Tri, Long, Bin, Dung, and a few others whose names I didn't know. After a while, Long and Dung were released, but the rest were sent to solitary confinement in Subcamp K1. Some later died there, and those who survived endured terrible fates. Lunch was delivered as usual by the criminal inmates, but I heard someone order not to eat. I didn't know who gave this order, and no one dared enter the dining area, fearing they might meet the same fate as Thuong that morning. It was perhaps the first time the communists witnessed such defiance in the camp. Armed guards patrolled around Zone A but didn't enter. The warden came in to ask Nguyen about the ongoing situation. Some detainees demanded the release of their friends before they would eat. Thus, the hunger strike began. The song Vietnam, Proud Homeland, was sung repeatedly, accompanied by clapping hands that created a rousing rhythm. We rattle our chains before everyone, marching forward to shatter the shackles of mankind. This familiar atmosphere reminded me of the student protests orchestrated by the communists in the past. Now it was unfolding in a communist re-education camp. Truly poetic justice. Even songs like Rise Up and Go and Voluntary, originally composed by the communists, had turned into weapons against them. Lyrics such as, "Who can win without ever facing defeat? Who becomes wise without enduring hardships? Or if I must die, let it be for my homeland," resonated more powerfully than ever. Tuan, Han, Locke, and I sat at our spot, drinking tea and enjoying the hunger strike. Dinner wasn't brought in, and the uneaten lunch remained in the dining hall. Around 6 p.m., the warden and armed guards came to conduct the usual roll call. Instead of standing outside, we stayed seated and recited our numbers. Nostalgic and protest songs continued until midnight. Even though the lights were turned off earlier than usual, we took turns singing. Since I didn't know many songs, I sang an old romantic tune called Jealousy. It was merely a love song. Around midnight, we retreated to our mosquito nets to sleep, exhausted and with empty stomachs. The hunger strike began with great noise, but ended in silence. The communists isolated us without forbidding what we wanted to do within the fenced-in Zone A. Without external support or guidance from any organization, the protest resembled a small flame, brief and fleeting. They didn't need to suppress the defiance. It extinguished itself. I had foreseen this and awaited the retaliatory measures the communists would inevitably take. The following morning, the officers came to conduct a roll call. Detainees exited the cells, but additional armed guards accompanied the warden. No one mentioned whether the hunger strike would continue. A day without food and a night of singing left everyone hungry and tired. When lunch was brought to the dining hall, everyone gathered their containers, and the detainee in charge distributed portions as usual. The hunger strike ended as effortlessly as it began. Some detainees continued to gather to sing nostalgic songs, but the numbers dwindled. After one night, I believed everyone realized the perilous situation they were in. Without any external support, the communists had yet to retaliate, but I wondered what would happen next. I suspected they wouldn't let it slide easily. Perhaps they had learned a lesson from the uproar when they took the detainees who beat Thuong away and were now waiting for things to settle down. The prominent figures in the hunger strike were later punished in various ways. Some died in other camps, and some became informants even worse than the ones before.